Several ships tied to Iran are still moving through the Strait of Hormuz, according to new tracking data, even after the U.S. announced a blockade of Iranian ports earlier this week. U.S. officials are saying that the blockade is specifically aimed at ships going in and out of Iranian ports, not those simply just passing through. And that distinction seems to matter. Data shows multiple vessels that had recently docked in Iran are now traveling through the waterway. So the goal of the blockade is to cut off Iran's oil revenue, much of which is still flowing to Asia, but it's not yet clear how tightly the blockade is being enforced. Some ships initially turned away, while others have continued moving through the area. President Trump called Iran's control of the waterway blackmail and warned that ships approaching the blockade could be targeted. Iran's parliamentary speaker pushed back with a warning of its own. If you fight, we will fight. China has also criticized this U.S. move, calling it dangerous and warning it could disrupt global trade. In Europe, French President Emmanuel Macron is urging the U.S. to return to negotiations with Iran and reopen the Strait of Hormuz without control or tolls as soon as possible. Now, he, along with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, this Friday with dozens of countries aiming to de-escalate tensions and reopen the waterway. Now, back in Washington, Vice President J.D. Vance said the U.S. has made its position clear and is now waiting on Iran to respond, saying the ball is very much in their court, emphasizing that Iran must not be allowed to develop nuclear weapons. At the same time, the U.S. is juggling other diplomatic efforts in the region. Secretary of State Marco Rubio joined talks between Israel and Lebanon in Washington, the first high-level discussions between the two in decades, following recent clashes involving the Iran-backed Hezbollah group. Pakistan is also trying to bring sides back to the negotiating table, though recent efforts didn't result in peace. Iran is introducing new demands in talks with the U.S., including compensation for war damage, and they're allegedly assessing hits to buildings and key energy infrastructure like oil and petrochemical facilities. Another factor, Iran has been charging ships fees to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, turning the route into a source of revenue. The U.S. blockade, however, could limit that income by targeting ships connected to Iranian ports.